I missed a massive detail in Hunter x Hunter chapter 403, a detail which I hinted at in the previous video with some baby speak, which some of you very clever people picked up on. But just what is this in First Queen Unma's room? This is a crib. I'd recognize one of these anywhere because you see, I also used to be a baby. So I had one. But the question is, why does Queen Unma had one now? As far as I can see, there are three options as to who the mystery baby occupying this crib is. It's either a connection to First Prince Benjamin, son of Queen Unma, or potentially a connection to profound paramour beyond Netero, perhaps even a secret 15th Prince of the Kakin Empire, and or the most morbid option of all, some very, very bad news for 14th Prince Wobble. I'll be going through some other stuff in this video as well, because these chapters are unbelievably packed. No matter how many times you read them, I guarantee you've still missed something. And this is an advantage that Yoshihiro Togashi has that very few other mangaka have, because he's not on a weekly schedule. He's had 2 years to be thinking and planning for exactly what he's going to be putting in these chapters, and it makes the Hunter x Hunter reading experience so much richer, because this world really does go as deeply as you want to dive. And right now, I want to dive into the idea that the baby in this crib is First Prince Benjamin's child. At the end of chapter 402, Melody's group wrote a series of letters to each prince, revealing certain key pieces of information. One of them was Hulkenberg's true birth, a question that we have now had answered. The second was the crimes of Saradnik, a question that we never needed answered, because we were given the answer long before there was a need for a question, as Togashi seriously struggled to keep even a shred of his depravity off page. And the third key revelation was, and I quote, Benjamin's secret. And up until the end of this chapter, I couldn't even really speculate on what that was. Benjamin is definitely the meanest looking of all of the princes and one of the most determined to win, but honestly, compared to a lot of his siblings, he's really not that bad a dude. He doesn't want the Kakin throne for his own selfish reasons. He stated on multiple occasions that his drive is for the good of the nation, and he's formed solid, genuine bonds of brotherhood with every soldier who has served under him. The reason why Benjamin feels a bit sinister is, I think, because of the lion he killed when we were introduced to him, and I will also say that panels like this certainly don't do a lot to counter the impression that Benjamin is some sort of grand evil villain to defeat. But after that point, he hasn't really displayed any traits that you would call traditionally antagonistic. He seems more like a misguided hero. Well, I don't know, hero might be the wrong word. What Benjamin is, right, he's a patriot. And he's doing what he believes is best for his nation. And so he's willing to make deep sacrifices to attain that goal. But as a result of that, I don't think that Benjamin is the kind of guy that's going to have any sinister secrets. I could be wrong about that. But the way I see Benjamin is that if he were to keep something a secret, then it would be because that something is worth protecting. Like perhaps a child he's had, because as the eldest prince, he's had quite a bit of time in this world to reproduce. And if this child does belong to Benjamin, then I see him caring deeply for it, in the same way that he cares for his soldiers, but much less willing to sacrifice the baby. So this child puts him in a very awkward position, because if any of the other princes find out about it, then they could use the baby as leverage against Benjamin. Benjamin and his soldiers are prepared to do whatever it takes, make any sacrifice, but this could be Benjamin's one weakness. If he cares for this child anywhere near as much as he cares for his country, then I could imagine Benjamin allowing himself to be removed from the contest with the promise that his child won't be harmed. That's if another prince managed to get a hold of the baby. Thankfully, right now the child is about as safe as it possibly could be under the care of potential grandmother First Queen Unma, because her room is one of the safest and most secretive aboard the entire vessel. Nobody except for King Nasabi can demand entry into the First Queen's quarters, so if you needed to hide a secret, this is gonna be where the least amount of eyes are. It's also quite clever to stash something in a queen's room in general, because most people are so focused on the prince's rooms and they're kind of disregarding the queen's, which they really shouldn't, because the queens are mostly playing active roles to support their children. But the kind of morbid reality is that if this is Benjamin's child, and he did go on to win the succession contest, then the future of this child is to become a participant in the contest of the next generation, and potentially just exist to be sacrificed for the good of someone else. Which sounds very familiar, doesn't it? It's almost like a certain Beyond Netero took inspiration from the principles of the succession contest. In particular, taking direct inspiration to implement his cursed children, a lot of many's to be sacrificed for the prosperity of the one. So as much as I do think that Benjamin is the more likely answer at this point, we also should not overlook that this is another potential Beyond Netero baby. I can't put anything past this man at this point, and it's very possible that, like all good death games in most media, we have a secret contestant, a 15th prince, if you will, someone who Beyond popped in the Unma oven just in time to be ready for Christmas dinner. Because that is the thing about the succession contest. The exact language is that participation is limited to only the children of legal wives of Nasibi, not legal children, legal wives. Which means that in theory, any of the legal wives could submit their child, even if they're currently unrecognized or even completely unknown to the Kakin monarchy. And in the same chapter that the legal wives clause is stated, Saraynik even asks how many people are participating in the contest. And the little butler dude says that he can't answer that question at the moment, and it never does get answered. All we have are implications because Togashi shows a couple of montages of the 14 princes, and so we just assume that this is our full roster. But that may not be the case, and there's a very interesting question we've had for a long time about the room with 14 coffins, where all of the deceased princes are taken. This has always been a bit puzzling because in theory, you don't need 14. That's one too many. If there's only going to be one winner, then we just need 13. And one theory is that the 14th coffin is for King Nasibi himself, that he will be the final sacrifice and leave the throne open for the eventual winner, or the opposite, Nasibi plans on sacrificing all 14 of his children for greater powers for himself. But then again, if there's 15 princes, then 14 coffins also makes a lot of sense, because 14 princes again need to die to leave us our one winner. And there's also still a couple of lingering mysteries in regards to the original appearance of the guardian spirit beasts. When Woble's room was assaulted after departure, we see a lot of now recognizable guardian spirit beasts like Mariam's dragon, Momozer's mouse, and the eye wogs produced by Tyson's beast. But there are still some genuine mysteries regarding the floating jellyfishy things and the big old worm. The leading theory on the worm is that this is the true manifestation of Fugetsu's guardian spirit beast, which is called magical worm and creates wormholes for Fugetsu to travel through. And the current leading idea for the jellyfish is that they form part of Camilla's guardian spirit beast because it seems to be based on a sea anemone. At least those are the explanations that I lean most towards. But it could also be a secret 15th guardian spirit beast in play. And then we also have the most sinister explanation, that this baby isn't a secret prince but was born because of one. As I've stated in the intro, this is an incredibly morbid idea, but this baby could be Beyond's cursed child that was assigned to 14th Prince Woble, because Beyond strategically had children at approximately the same time as each prince was born, so that Beyond could naturally have them grow up and be assigned to each prince due to their similar age. Of course, we don't know exactly how this works. The bearer of this information, Longi, doesn't take for granted that each cursed child is dedicated to their assigned prince, or assigned to their dedicated prince. I guess both works. But I'm also not entirely sure how else it would work, because I feel like it's very difficult to program a curse for someone that doesn't yet exist, and especially if you don't even know if they will ever exist, and if so, when. So unless the idea of Oito being Beyond's child and Woble being his granddaughter pans out, I can't imagine that Beyond would have left Woble out of the curse party. It would be an incredibly arrogant oversight, and therefore maybe the baby in this crib exists simply to be sacrificed should Prince Woble become an issue. Of course, we then need to ask the question of why Woble's curse is in Unma's room. It would be implying that she was working with Beyond's Netero, and when I say working, I mean working. Although that would really add a lot of fuel to the idea of Hulkenberg being Beyond's child, who Unma hid away so that he wouldn't become the target of Benjamin and Saraynik prior to the contest beginning. And just on that look, this could be nothing. But the title of chapter 403 is very potentially an interesting clue of its own. The title of the chapter is Seika, meaning results. And at first glance, this makes sense because the chapter is showing us the results of Might's assassination attempt on Hulkenberg, but Seika doesn't mean those kind of results, because a result can be both positive and negative. The results of your bad actions, for example. Don't think I don't know about them. But Seika is used to describe positive outcomes that result from putting in hard work and effort. It's more the equivalent of the fruits of your labor. And this terminology is also how Jing referred to Beyond's Netero's plans, as Seika, and it wasn't a generic turn of speech either. Jing did so in quotation marks, really emphasizing this word. So this could be pulling a connection out of nowhere, but Togashi could be subtly drawing a connection between Beyond's plans and this chapter, which at face value has very little, if anything, to do with Beyond. But we could be seeing the fruits of his labor manifesting nonetheless. I also have another translation thing I want to go over from chapter 403, because in the last video I pointed out an error in the scan translation, and I think it's only fair that I also point out something questionable in the official as well, which is the translation of Hulkenberg's Nen ability, which in the official is, the boy who shoots shoots the arrow. Grimmel, the dissonance. And this is one of those situations where I feel like translation has gone a bit far. So far that it has in fact failed to convey the original meaning here. If you missed my last video, we went over Hulkenberg's Nen ability, the latter part of which in Japanese is Grimmel les dissonances, which I don't point out to be all wanky with my French. Je ne dis pas que le français est meilleur que l'anglais. But the point is that this was a very specific reference to the Les Dissonances orchestra founded by David Grimmel. And the one thing that's kind of annoying is that the English translation doesn't even spell his name right. They've got it with Grimmel with 2 M's and an EL. So you can't even look this ability up if you are curious about it, because you're not using the correct name of the orchestra or its founder. And in fact, if you do Google the English name of this ability, the only results you get are Grimmel from How to Train Your Dragon. And it's a shame because this so strongly informs Hulkenberg's character. Les Dissonances is an orchestra that was born from the idea of music as a shared experience. And something I neglected to mention in the previous video is that it's also an orchestra without a conductor, which reflects Hulkenberg's desire to end the Kakin monarchy and shift to a democratic system. Look, in the end, it's not that big a deal, but this is something that will forever be lost in translation to you if you only read the official English. So I do think that in this case they should have left the name in French and also not misspelled it. But also a few of you have pointed this out in the comments, and this is an idea that I love, but what Hulkenberg is doing here may very much breach into the territory of post-mortem Nen use, because the idea right now is that he plans on dying, and then either being revived by having his consciousness go back into his body after he's done doing whatever he wants to do with might, or by just letting himself die and continuing to exist in a series of ever-changing bodies that don't belong to him. Either way, this could end up being Hulkenberg rather accidentally stumbling upon the most powerful type of Nen use and finding a way to exploit post-mortem Nen while still having a life to make use of it. Much like how Hisoka did in Heaven's Arena, where yeah, he technically died and he had Bungee Gum revive him, now giving him a suite of new abilities that he was not previously capable of. And the thing about Hulkenberg is that he believes hard. And I can't imagine that being willing to literally die would be an act that is not significantly rewarded in the Nen world. That kind of determination is what allowed Kurapika to create Chain Jail, what gave Neferpito the ability to leave a horrifically powerful post-mortem Nen beast in their place, and of course, what gave Gon the power to kill Pito, necessitating the leaving of said beast to begin with. And being real here, Hulkenberg's power is already quite terrifying on its own. And it's so hard to imagine him as being the hope that most people believe he is with panels like this, of a merciless archer being supported by a faceless mob that look like something more at home in a horror manga. So if you were to add post-mortem Nen on top of that, then there's really no limit to what this dude could become. All I know is that it's not gonna be good.